Hey, shalom, shalom. As you can tell from the title, what I'm going to go into today is the understanding of the Hebrew mathematics, the Hebrew science of the alphabet. And a little known fact is that it's older than the supreme mathematics and the supreme alphabet that the Nation of Islam and the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths use. Our system of the Hebrew alphabets and the Hebrew numbers having a meaning and a significance predates any other system you can find. Matter of fact, we can prove it to go back to 3,000 years, and it's followed the Hebrew alphabet for over 3,000 years. You understand? Showing that it's right, it's exact, it's balanced, it's righteous, and it's divine, it's holy. It comes from the Creator Himself. It's not something that somebody sat back and thought about based on the Hebrew alphabet. As a matter of fact, you can't even find it in Arabic. You can find it in the Hebrew, which is the language of our ancestors. And the reason it's significant because it gives you an understanding, it gives you a knowledge, and it gives you a wisdom to apply to situations, circumstances, words, direction, and guidance according to what it means in our according to what it means in our original language. So this is something that you have to understand if you want to get a higher level application of the word of our ancestors that were given to them by the Most High, right? By Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. All praise to the Most High, Yahweh. All right, El Shaddai, Yahweh El Elyon, the Most High God, or Yahweh Allah Al Yawan, the God Almighty. Which, by the way, the word Allah is composed of a three-letter word that appears in the ancient Hebrew: Aleph, Lamed, and Hey. Okay. So now, what I want to go into is some of the systems that we have. I'm going to show you how the 5% Nation of Gods and Earth and how the Nation of Islam are basically using a system based on English. But our system as Hebrews should be based on the Hebrew. And we have the evidence of it written by a brother from the years 1000. Yeah, you heard me right, the year 1000 up to the year 1050. All right. And the brother's name is Abu Al Faraj Harun. All right. And he was in Jerusalem. He spoke Hebrew and he spoke Arabic, and he left the records for us. All right. So all of the Hebrew letters, as you know, have a significance. All right. And what I want, and a numeric value. All right. So first, I want you to show and prove to yourself. All right. I want you to show and prove to yourself. All right. If you go into a book called the Handbook of Biblical Numismatics, Numismatics, all right, numismatic, which means the study of coins. When you look into biblical numismatics, you see a coin from around 78 BC under a ruler from the Maccabees family, from the Hasmonean dynasty. And on that letter, he has the Hebrew letter Kuf, all right, or Kop. And after that, he has a letter Hey or Ha'ah. And he uses this to represent the number 20 as well as the number 25, letting us see that the system that we use today for the Hebrew letters and the Hebrew alphabets and the Hebrew numbers corresponded to something that we could take at least, you understand, over 2,100 years in the past. So in the language of the 5% nations, if that ain't right and exact, I don't know what is. We got coins with the ka, you understand, which is the 11th Hebrew letter representing the number 20. And then we got the number 5 being represented by the letter H. Now let me take you through the math on it. You got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, all right, Wawa, Zain, Het, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Wawa, Zain, Chet, all right? Aba, Gada, Ha, Waza, Ha, Ta, and Ya. A, Ba, this is the sounds. I'm just doing basic sounds. A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za, Ha, Ta, Ya. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with the Yod. What the Yod represent? What I don't got no more of right now. Yod represents the hand, all my power. After the Yod, all right, if I bring the Yod together, what I got? My two palms coming together. That's the Hebrew letter for 20, which is a Kop, which represent the combining of my two hands together, Kop, which means the palm. Because after I get to 10, I'm not going to go to 11. I'm going to go to 2 and 0 because I got 1 and 0 over here. All right. Abba, Gada, Ha, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daleth, He. Abba, Gada, Ha, Wa, Za, all right, or Wawa, Zain, Ha, Ta, Ya, Het, all right, Tet, and Yod, Yad. So after I reach that, I'm going to the next set of letters, which is now 20. All right. Now, remember I said 25. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He. A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha. It's 5. Fifth letter of the alphabet. The fifth letter of the alphabet. And it represents the number 5. Like, behold, hey, come here. All right, check this out. All right, Ha. Put 2 of them up, Ha-ah. And that's how the ancient letter looked. It's a head and 2 hands, and over time it went sideways like this: 3 lines, three horizontal lines and 1 vertical line. So the science of it is anatomical, and it's anatomical, and is based on nature and the natural use of things. You understand? So you can see that from the Handbook of Biblical Numismatics, and I'm talking about from 78 BC. All right, under a ruler named Janaeus, and you got these letters on the coins. So that shows that the Hebrews were using the letters to represent the science of math way before Islam came on the scene. So that's the Hebrew mathematics. You understand? So each of the Hebrew letters represents, we have 22 Hebrew letters. So you go from 1 to 10, or you go from 1 to 9, and then you go from 20, or you go from 10 all the way up to 90. And then you go from 100 up to 400. That gives us 22 letters. Now, we lost the science of this. Now, in this book, which is based on a grammar book, the grammar book, all right, is based on a Hidayat al-Qarib, which is a guide to the reader, written by Harun, all right, in the 11th century. And I'm going to show you the book. Now, this book is written by Immanuel Khan, and he based it on a Hidayat al-Qarib. With the name of the book right there. All right there. Hidayat al-Qarib, Guide for the Reader. And that was the guide for people wanting to learn the Hebrew. Now, let me tell you how we lost the science of this. And he tells you this in the book. He says the second point is that those who were exiled and did not come back with Ezra, that's 2,500 years ago right there. He said, and Nehemiah, peace be upon them. This is what he says. Remained scattered, and they lost knowledge of the accents and began to read with different cantillations. So he's telling you that the ones that didn't return to Ezra, they develop a different system. So he's talking about the Babylonian system that they talk over down in Yemen today. So he's saying that the Yemen pronunciation, the Babylonian pronunciation, is not the same as the one that Ezra had, because Ezra brought it back to Israel. And that's where you get the Tiberian pronunciation. The evolution of the Hebrew pronunciation in the Tiberian is based upon what Ezra and them did when they came into Babylon, when they came from Babylon back to Israel. Again, that's the Tiberian. Okay, so that's the Tiberian. So the Hebrew science of the numbers is ancient. And some people lost this knowledge. They lost the knowledge. But I tell you what, again, I'm all about showing and proving. All right. If you check out a book, this book is called Sefer HaGematria. Now, this book was written after the one I just read. This book was written between the 10th and 11th century. All right. Sefer HaGematria, Seferha Gematri. It was written between the 1100s and the 1200s. Now, in this book, this is the first solid, complete book where we have a listing that I just gave you of all of the Hebrew letters representing a certain number when you write them. All right, a certain number when you write them. All right, so that's where we can, check that out. Now, the Hebrew the Hebrew words themselves, the Hebrew letters themselves are based on words. All right. And each Hebrew letter is something that's called acrophonic. Now, what does acrophonic mean? Acrophonic means the letters are the sounds of the word. In other words, if you got the English letter G, when you say J, J, G, that's not what go begins with. That's not what garbage begins with. That's not what get begins with. So it's not acrophonic. When you say Hebrew, the letter of the letter of the first sound is a and aleph, bet and bait, bayath, gamal and ga, dalat and da, ha'a and ha, wawa and wa, zayan or zain and za, chayat and cha, tayat and ta, yad and ya, and so on and so forth. That's the first 10. So each of those letters, you understand, represent a sound that is in the word itself. And guess what else? We have something that's called pictographs, meaning what you write, the letters you use to write that word, tell you symbolically what that word represents. Now, when I give this example, you understand, an example that I really like to use is the example of the word father. The word father in Hebrew is ab, or you can also say abba. That word in Hebrew is aleph or alap and beit or bayath. What that word means is ox and house. So that's what the word father represents in the Hebrew. It represents an ox or a big, strong animal who has horns, who can move things, who can pull things, that can push things, all right? And has many different uses, followed by the word Beth or Bayath, which means a house. So the ox or the strength or the power of the house is the father. So you see how simple it is in the Hebrew. So English doesn't have that. Matter of fact, the English letters A, B, C, D is based on the Greek letters. Um, what is it? Alpha, beta, gamma, gamma, and delta. And those letters are based on the Hebrew. Alpha is alap, beta is bet or bayath. All right. And the um, gamma is based on gamal. And the delta is based on dalat. Dalat, delta. You see that? So the English letter come from the Greek, and the Greek letters come from the Hebrew. That's why you say alpha, beta, gamma, all right, delta in the Greek, it don't mean nothing. It doesn't mean, it has no meaning. But you said in the Hebrew, aleph, bet, gimel, dalet has a meaning, or alat, bayat, gamal, dalat has a meaning. Those letters mean something. You don't see that with the Nation of Islam supreme alphabet. They had to assign, all right, A is Allah. All right. B is born. All right. C is represents something. D represents something. Everything represents something. But I'm thinking I'm about to go to G for God because that's what the G is. The third letter is in the Hebrew. But when you get into the English, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you come to the seventh letter. But you go to our seventh letter, Abba, Gada, Hawa, Za, you got a weapon. You come into G, God, in the Hebrew is as the third letter, if you want to say that. But in our letter, it ain't. It's first because the concept of God in the Hebrew is Allah, which is the Hebrew word for power, which is from the first letter of the alphabet. All right. By the time you get to the 10th letter, which represents power, strength, movement, manifestation, you get to the letter Yahweh, which represents the first letter of the name of the Almighty Creator, Yahweh. All right. So now let me give you, some more understanding of this thing right here that we're talking about. All right. Now, there's a book from 1824. I'm gonna get into it a little later, another video where they give you all of the sciences behind the Hebrew grammar, the Hebrew letters, and all of that. It's 1824, still before the 5%, still before the Nation of Islam, still before Fard Muhammad, all right, came and started talking to people about XYZ. So it's before all of that. You understand? So we already saw in Hidayat al-Qarib. Now listen to what he said right here. I'm gonna show you how these people knew the science of what time it was. This says it has remained that way of reading. It has remained the way of reading that has been transmitted among them from generation to generation, from one offspring to another until now. All right. If it be said, what? The wicked Edom deported the people. Listen what he said. What is said to have happened during the conquest of Jerusalem by Edom. So he's talking about Edom, which is a so-called white man talking about the Romans. Now, this is science you ain't going to be able to get from the 5%ers because they don't deal with the nations of who the so-called white man is. They just say he's the devil, and Yaqub, the big-headed science, grafted him over many thousands of years by taking the strong and weak germs and distinguishing and discriminating between them in his reproduction. That's what they say. But the truth is, Esau, the so-called white man, was born as a twin opposite of Jacob, our father, or Yaakov, or who they say Yaqub in the Arabic, which came after the Hebrew. So we're going to say Yaakov or Yaakov. That's what we're going to say. They may say Yaqub, but we don't have no U in that word in the ancient Hebrew pronunciation. All right, so now check this out. I'm going to show you. I mean, again, this book was written in the 1000s, between the 1000s and 1050. And in here, you understand, he talks about Edom. You understand right there. You see, he goes into Edom. Right here. You see that? Talks about Edom right here. Talks about Edom right there. He talks about Edom right there. You understand? He talks about Edom in different places inside the book. He goes into other areas talking about Edom. And you can see the name of the book right there, Hidayat al-Qarib. You see? So this is the Hebrew history that the scholars wrote about in the year 1000 to 1050. You understand, this is 1,000 years worth of game, science, history that the man is giving us. All right, that the man is giving us. Right, so he goes into a lot of the different, he goes into a lot of the good history, right, talking about Edom, stuff like that, and what they did, and how that also caused us to lose the language, because the people of Edom controlled the land of Israel. All right, and this is what he says right here. He said the people of Edom controlled the land of Israel. He says, which was about 500 years. All right. So he said they controlled it for about 500 years. Um, the so-called Edomites. All right. So-called Edomites, until some of the Israelite people took over. You know what I'm saying? So he don't say who took over, because he's under the Arab rulership when he's writing this right now. But Rome had already fallen as a power in Israel at that time. And then after that, what did you have in the 1000s? You had Saladin fighting against the people in Jerusalem, trying to get control over Jerusalem. You understand? So this history is on point. All right. So now, what I want to kind of go into right now is it's called the Mispar HaChreki. That's the 1 through 400. Now, I already told you the book that you can get where it talks about that. Actually, which is the Sefer HaGematria, which is written between 1100 and 1200. So our knowledge of the letters and what they mean and how it goes into a mathematical system is in books. We got these books are like, we're talking about books that are like over 800 years old, 800 to 900 years old. Now, here's another book. And people, don't really go into a lot of the grammar books, but this grammar book right here is called Gesenius's. It's called Gesenius's Hebrew grammar. Now, let me read something inside this grammar book also. Now, this grammar book right here, this first grammar book was written in the year 1813. Again, before anything dealing with the Nation of Islam. This book was written in 1830. The first edition of it was written in 1813. So now, what I want to show you is this. Inside the grammar book, that was the first one was written in 1813. And then they just kept doing like, different, this is the 28th edition. And the first one was done in 1813. You can see that right there at the bottom of the book right there with the first red line at the bottom. All right, so you see that? The first red line at the bottom, it tells you the first edition appeared in Hal at 1813. Now you read the last line in red. The present 28th large edition was done where? All right. See that? It says the first abridged edition appeared in 1896. The second at the same time as the present 28th large edition, 18. So it's saying 1896 is the second one appeared. All right. So this is how old this information is in here. So I'm gonna read to you what it says on page 27. I'm gonna read you what it says on page number 27. Check this out. All right. It says it is another question whether the present names are all original. They may be merely due to a later and not always accurate interpretation of the forms. So he's saying it could be, could not be. Moreover, it is possible that the period about 1500 to 1000, the original forms underwent considerable change, meaning they changed how they wrote these letters. Could have changed how they wrote them. Basically, from the time coming out of Egypt, which is around 1500s, right? 1446. We came out of Egypt around 1446, which if you go back if you go back like 54 years, now you're coming into the time frame that Moses was in captivity in Egypt. Well, Moses was present in Egypt as a ruler. Because remember, he came back to Egypt when he was 80 in 1446. And he left when he was 40, which would have been like 18, which would have been like 1480. So when we came in 1480, that meaning if we go back 20 years before that, you understand, Moses would have been 20 years old in Egypt. So they're saying before Israel got set up as a nation, and until the 1000s, which is when 1100s rather, um, they say 1100. It said 1000 BC, which around the King David. So he's saying from the time of Moses all the way up to the time of King David that it's possible that the Hebrew letters did change, and we know that because we see the archaeology of how we wrote when we was at Jabal al-Lawz, all right, in around the land of Midian, all right, on the Red Sea, the Red Sea on the eastern side of the Red Sea, right? Um, we see how the letters were at that rock that they got over there when we did some inscriptions, and we see how it is in the time of King David with the paleo letters that we use now. So we know that it did change. So this book is accurate in that regard. Now, look what he says. He says the usual explanation of the present names of letters is, he says alap, ox. Then he says, I'm gonna read it as he has it written. He says Beit, house. He says Gimel, camel. All right. And then he says Dalet, door. All right. Properly a folding door. All right. And that's how it looks. It's like a tent door that you open it and you shut it. When you have a tent, you open a tent like a triangle and then you shut it back down like a delta. All right. Like the Greek delta. All right. And then it says um and then it says a hey, it says an air hole, but we know that's also used to say behold. Wawa, it says a hook or a nail. Then it says zayin, weapon. All right. And then it says chait, fence or barrier. All right. And then it says tayat taith, which is a winding. All right, like the bottom, we know it also to represent like the bottom of a basket going round and round and round, and you get to the bottom. All right, and then you got the section where it comes together, looking like an X at the bottom with a circle around it. Then it says uh, yod, hand, or a bent hand. Um, then it says kap, it says bent hand. And then it says lamad or lamed, representing a shepherd, a ox goad. Then it says mayim or mayam, representing water. Noon, representing fish. So my point is that they even talk about the Ethiopic. My point is that this is the knowledge that the scholars are looking at these ancient letters saying, yup, this mean that, this mean that. And this is from the 1800s. Then we got from the 1000s, all right, from the Sefer HaGematria, written between the 1100s, written between the 1100 and the 1200, not the 1000s, written between the 1100 and the 1200s. And then we got the Sefer, the Hidayat al-Qari, talking about they lost the languages written between the year 1000 and the year 1050. So this ain't something that somebody, happened to, you know, um, that somebody happened to just make up. All right. Now, this part I'm about to read right now, you understand? This part I'm about to read right now is going into different letters. All right. Now, this is on page 30, and it tells you this, which is backed up by the historical. Now, remember, I'm reading this to you in the year 2025. This book was originally written in 1813. And the evidence of it historically is in a book called Sefer HaGematria, written between the 1100s and the 1200s, but it goes back to the time period of the first century, of the first century BC, in the time of the Maccabee rulers, all right, that you can see in the Handbook of Biblical Numismatics, where it talks about the coins used in Israel, where they had the letters, all right, representing numerical values. So it's an old system. It ain't something that somebody just made up. At best, you can say it's a system that's at least 2,100 years old, if you're just going to go off the coins. But the coins have other indications before those coins were found. And you can look at that book called Handbook of Biblical Numismatics, and it'll explain to you all the proof that the Hebrews were using different letters to represent different numerical values from 1 to 400. Now, this book, again, written in 1813, backed up by several historical references, says this. It says, in default, a special arithmetical, that's what it says, arithmetical, not arithmetical or arithmetic. It says arithmetical. In default, a special arithmetical figures, but I mean number figures, the consonants were used as numerical signs. So you see that? That's math. That's the letters representing the mathematical value. That's the letters representing the mathematical value. All right. And then it gives the different sources. It says the earliest traces of this usage are, however, first found on the Maccabean coins. These numerical letters are afterwards commonly employed, e.g., the marking, the numbers and chapters and verses in addition to the Bible far centuries after that. The units are denoted by Aleph to Ta, the tens by Yod to Tzadia, all right, and then 1 to 100 represented by Kuf or Kwawap to Thawa. The numbers, so now they got all of that. So basically, that's the basic system that they can see these numbers being represented. Then they go to get into another system that was invented after that, where the numbers 500 to 900, were used with adding other hundreds. Like they say, Tha and Kwawap, all right, would represent by, or Kuf would represent by, would represent 500. All right. So that's the point. So now, this is what I want to get into now. I want to get into, the calendar system. Now, we know that we're in the 4th month now. All right. We're in the 4th moon. So this 4th moon is really going into the fact of how we're operating. The sun and the moon lined up in the 4th constellation. And the sun is in the 4th constellation right now. All right. Now that 4th constellation represents the Dalath. That's the 4th letter. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daleth. Daleth, or Alat, Bayath, Gamal, Dalath, represented 4. So that Dalath is the number 4, and that 4 goes into representing the 4 corners of the earth with 3 sets of people. Dalath representing 3 sons of men, sons which are the chosen of Israel, sons of the wicked, who's conquered and colonized the whole world. And then the sons of men, those are the people that's getting conquered by the sons of the wicked, waiting for the sons of the righteous, us, the chosen of Israel, to come into rulership. So those are all the 3 powers that are distributed over the 4 corners, of the earth. So now, when we go into wisdom that 4 represents the plan, or having knowledge on how to execute things based on discretion. All right, so it represents discretion. Now in Hamashiach, it also represents being rooted. Everything on the earth is rooted in the earth, and even the ocean is rooted in the earth. So that's going into the branch, all right, because that's the 4th step of Hamashiach. You got being as a child, you got dying, and then you have being born again, being a new creature, and then you have the 4th one, which represents a branch being plugged into Torah, wisdom, Hamashiach, combination of all 3. So that's the vibration of this particular month in the elements. in the elements of the celestial bodies created by Yahweh on the fourth day, right? The fourth day of creation. So you see how them fours line up, but then the fours go back to the three, because 4 plus 3 is going to give you 7, which represents the completion of the cycle of our week, which is our day of worship, which we're going into in a few hours on this so-called Friday evening, Friday afternoon, Friday evening. You see that? So it all comes together. Let you understand that this cycle of the fourth moon, represented by a triangle shape, which is a dalath, 1 point, 2 points, and 3 points, represented like that, like a triangle. You bring them both together, you got 7 completion, which represents the unity of our people across the whole world, which goes into rulership, because once we unite, we go into rulership. So that's the vibration of this particular month. Doors being open, going into new areas, leaving old areas, understanding and putting into motion new plans, leaving off the old plans, getting more rooted into the branch of Hamashiach, because next month you got to be what? A branch that's bringing forth fruit, represented by that 5. And it's got to be balanced, as I say, right and exact, because now you go from discretion into what? Equity. You see that? The scale's got to be right. So it's all biblical, and it's all given to us by the numbers of where we are in the constellations, and the letters that are we representing by the numbers where we are. Because in the Hebrew, Abba Gada, Aleph Bet Gimel Daleth represents 4, and that's the month that we're in now, right? So now the data we're in right now, from Thursday night until Friday night comes, is going to be the 10th day. Now that 10th day represents the hand. The hand represents the strength. It represents power. Okay, it represents the manifestation of power, just like Yahweh, or Yahweh, Yasharala or Yisrael, and Yahawashi or Yeshua or Yehoshua. All that yod, power, 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 from the 10th letter, which those 3 again can go back into the Daleth of Yahweh, and then Israel being at the left, and then Hamashiach being at the right. Israel at the left because we've fallen, but when we come back to Hamashiach, and that gives us access to Yahweh. You understand? That give us access to, you got those 3, and those 3 are the earthly powers. The Most High is a power everywhere. So we right back into what? That takes us right back into that 3. Yasha Allah, the 10th letter. All right. Yahweh, the 10th letter. Yahweh Shi Hamashiach, Yeshua. That takes us into the 10th letter also. So it's all relative and it's all connected. Nothing is disconnected. Nothing is coincidental. And again, remember I said unity. When you take that 10 of the 10th day, 1 plus 0 is what? Is 1. Yahweh is 1. Hamashiach said, Father, make them 1. The Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God, Yahweh is 1. So you got 1, Israel is of 1. Father, make them 1, even as we are 1. Then you have Yahweh himself being 1. So you have a Mashiach pleading that we all, Father, make them 1. Father, you have a Mashiach saying, Father, make them 1, even as we are 1, so that they may be 1 in us. That's that unity. So it all connects back together. So our science of mathematics, our science of the supreme alphabet is based on actual facts of what was already written thousands of years ago, and what we can see right now as being real. It's real. Our unity is real. The need for our unity is real on this 10th day. is real. That's why it's being brought to you today. The strength and the power that's in your hand, all represented by the number 10, is being brought to you today, right now. It's being brought to you today, right now. You understand? On this 10th day. All right. So now, when your hand is operating, all right, you got what? You got knowledge, all right? You got knowledge, then you got instruction, understanding, and then discretion. So you got discretion, which is represented by number 4, which means that your hand has to have a plan on how to make things manifest that need to be manifest, how to make things. What's the plan to make it? To exercise and demonstrate your power as a man from your hand into creation, into the reality of what you can see, well, of what you can see, smell, taste, talk to, hear, and listen to, and touch. So all 5 of the senses working together. 4 of which are on your face, and the 5th one being controlled by what controls your face. What controls the whole body is the brain. The brain says to blink. The brain says smell. The brain says listen. The brain says taste, talk. The brain says hear. And then the brain says what? Touch. Bring all that together. All right. I'm going to touch this flower. Or let's see, I'm going to touch this strawberry. All right. I'm going to touch this strawberry that I can taste, I can smell, I can see. All right. And if you listen close, you may hear the wind blowing through the vine that the strawberry is connected to. So you got all 5 of your senses working together. You understand? So this is our understanding in science of the letters and of the alphabet. And it all works together. So this is kind of really just an introduction. We're not even going deep into it right now, but each letter represents something. Each number in the Hebrew represents something, and it all goes back to a particular a placement on the. It goes back into a particular placement in our 22 letters. That's the foundation of everything. As a matter of fact, everything in creation was made with those 22 letters. You can't get outside those 22. Not 26 that the English give us, and not the 22, and then the 5 finalists that we got in the Hebrew. All right, we got the Kop, like a K. We got the Mem. We got the Nun. We got the Pa, and then we got the Tzah. These are the 5 finalists that we have, where you have it's a bigger letter at the end of a word than it is when it's in the other section of the word. So that'll give you a total of 27, but we're not dealing with those 27. We're only dealing with the 22, because it's 22 vibrations of everything that was created. When you understand the Hebrew name, the vibration of it, you can see it. Let's look at the word water, for example. The word water is made up of 3 letters. All right. Let me write it down for you. I'm going to write it down. You got a Mem, Mayam, and you got a Yad. All right. Which is a hand. Mayam represent water and water. And then you got the Nun representing the fish. All right. So you got the Yad, Kata, Yaka, La, Ma. What's that number? That's 40, right? So you write down 40. And then you got the Yad, which is the 10th letter. All right, so you write down 10. And then after the Mom, you have the Nun, which is represented by 50. Kata, Ya, 10. Ka, with a C. Okay, La, or L. Ma, or M. La, Ma, Na. See that? Nun. That's going to be the 5th double-digit letter based on the Hebrew counting system. So now you got 50. All right. So you add all those together, and what you got? You got 100. You got 100. You understand? So that's 100%, meaning what? Everything is based on the mayam. Everything is based on the waters. The waters were separated. The firmament separates the water above from the waters that's below. So the water is the element that everything needs in order to survive, in order to be, to be defined. In other words, sand is the absence of water, but the oxygen, but no desert, never not all deserts, all dry places get land, get water eventually. So water is the basic element of life, 100%. That's the one. All right. All right. That's the one. So now let's break it down in the sense of the meaning of the letters. So you have water, mayam. The concept of it is what? The concept of it is movement. That's why you got the waves on the water. That's what the letter mem looks like. Looks like ocean or water waves. Then you have the yod, the hand, the power, the manifestation. All of us mammals are manifested in water. Our mothers carry us in water. Our mothers nourish us when we first born with a thing called colostrum, which has a lot of water, and then it has some other stuff in it, minerals and nutrients in it. Then the milk that we have from our mother is based on water, and then our body releases the water. Everything stays lubricated on your body. So water is 100% the basic element for all life. You understand? And then after that, you have the noon. All of us started out as little fish swimming, all right, through through tubes, all right, up ovaries into an egg, and there we were manifested in a period of between 9 or 10 months, Hebrew months, 10 new moons, a lot of times. All right. So that's the time period that we became manifested in the flesh coming through our mother's womb. So that is a basic element of life. All right, that mayim or mayam. So that's the meaning of that word is movement, hand, and fish. And the fish representing what? Multiplicity. All right, fish representing abundance. And we all come from an abundance of little seeds from our fathers that went through our mother. All right, and she gave birth to us through that same water from the power of her body as a woman. And that's why when we first come out, we flopping. The babies when they're first born, they have an instinct to kind of flop around like a fish because they're like a what? A fish out of water. So that's the science behind that word that means water. We all pass through it. We all pass through it. All of us, all of the mammals, lions, all right, they carry their young and then they push them out. All right, dogs, they carry the young, then they push them out. Cats. So we different families, but we are all what? Mammals. Mammal meaning mammary glands, meaning we all get nourished with milk from our mothers. And that milk is liquid, and all liquid is based on water. There's elements of water within all liquids. All right. Which is H2O. You understand? Hydrogen and oxygen binding together, those three elements. All right. Two elements of hydrogen and one molecule or element of oxygen coming together to make water. So that's the basic science behind that one word. 10. So we can take that same thing, mayam. All right. The 40, the word 40, that's going to be 10 times 4. And we have all of it present inside the word for water. So that yod is in the middle, balancing between the power, between the movement of the water and whether that movement of the water is going to produce, all right, multiplicity of life, keep life multiplying, and that little baby or that lion or that cat or that dog is going to be born and get water from the mother after being inside the water for a period of gestation or being inside of the womb of the mother. All right. So that yod, that yod in the middle of a word is very important. So this is the mathematics of the Hebrews. This is the alphabet of the Hebrews. So we got Abba, Gada, Hawaza, Hataya, Kala, Manasa, E, Ayin, Patiza, Kwara, Sha, Tha. 22 different sounds. And each sound has a vibration. And each sound and each letter represents a number. And when we go back to the number, all right, of the 400, which is the last letter, which is Thawa, all right, we get represented by the 4, 4, 0, 0. So we have 4, which is the Dalet, which is a door. So we have door, cipher, cipher meaning a circle or completion, which represents 360 degrees. 360 degrees, 2 cycles of 360 degrees. All right, 2 cycles. Then we have the 4 in front of that. All right, so it's a lot of science behind it. But again, if you're looking at the days and what the 5% is called today's mathematics, that's basic Hebrew understanding, because we know about the 12 constellations and we know that each month is going through a particular constellation as the base location when the sun and the moon coincide. And once the sun and moon coincide, all right, the sun represents the gravity of the vibration of that month, and the moon represents the movement through all of the different stations or constellations during that month, which represents the male and female energy, the male and female dominance in certain position and submission in certain situations. Now we know that the Joseph, he showed this in his dream when he saw that the sun and the moon bow down to him. Not only that, but in the Bible, the sun is called a he, masculine, and the moon is called a she, which is feminine. You see that? So these are the different things that we're looking at also. And what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us? Okay. Because the sun is going through one cycle at a time, and the moon goes through all of the 12 constellations within every new moon period. Between the new moons, it goes through all 12 constellations, passing back through the one where it started at. And then the next one over is when that new month is going to start. So these are just different levels of understanding that when you look at the Hebrew words, it's going to go beyond what you see. All right. Let's look at the word yad, door. The word yad is door in hand, meaning you can take your hand and you can have your power, your manifestation, and you can have a new beginning, right? Or you can stay inside and have the same motion that you've been having, but you got to put your hand to the door, open it, and walk to that next level. You see that? That's what the word yad, hand, represents. All right. The word hand is represented by the yad, which is a 10, and the daleth, which is represented by the 4. So that letter is going to be, we're going to see that letter on the 14th day, because that's going to be a 10 and a 4. Right. But that 10 and a 4, right, is going to come together. They're going to come together. Those concepts are going to come together. 10, all right, plus 4 is going to give you what? 10 plus 4 is going to give you 10 plus 4 is going to give you 14. 1 and 4. And then 1 plus 4 is going to give you what? 5. And that 5 represents what? Abba, Gada, Ha. Represents Ha'ah. Hey. It represents to behold something. It represents for you to go ahead and check something out. Okay. To check something out. Okay. To check it out and to notice it, to pay attention to it. That's what the letter 5 represents. All right. That's what the letter Hey and the number 5 both represent in Hebrew to be aware, to be conscious, to draw somebody's attention to you, or to be drawn into noticing something, or to have your attention, drawn to something else. There's a big sign up, exit 5, 3/4 of a mile, and you waiting on exit 6. So you're not gonna get off at exit 5, but it tells you. If it just said exit, you wouldn't know if it's exit, but because it says exit 5, 3/4 of a mile, you don't get off there, right? So you notice it. All right, it's something for you to behold, to check out, and that's what the word hey that's what the word hey, or that 5th letter, actually represents. Now, why Yahweh and Adam and the ancestors gave these different values to these 22 Hebrew characters, we don't know. We don't know. You see, we don't know, because it's different. You may have different animals. You may have different animals. You may have different 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 implements or tools. I mean, if you draw all of them together, right, you're gonna have and I just read them to you from the book, all right. But you're gonna have an ox. You're gonna have a house. You're gonna have a door. You're gonna have behold something. You're gonna have a hook. You're gonna have a weapon. You're gonna have a fence. You're gonna have something winding, or a basket at the circle of it, bottom of it. That's abagada hawazakata. Then you're gonna have a hand. Then you have a palm of the hand. Then you have a gold or shepherd staff, water. Then you have fish. Then you have a sign or a support with 3 horizontal lines being put on one vertical line. You have the hayin, which is your eye seeing. You have the mouth. You have a hook. So you have different signs. All right. So all of these different signs represent, all these different pictures represent something. All right. Everything is giving you an indication of what's going to happen. You have the kawap, or like a needle through an eye. Rash, which is the head. Then Sheen, which is the tooth. Then the Tawa, which is like just an X with no circle around it, just like X marks the spot. So those are all the different Hebrew words. And this is, what they mean. For example, you want to say the word war, which is light or order, or a war. All right. You have the first letter, which is the power. First letter always represents the power. That's going to be 1. Then you have the wawa, which represents a 6. All right. Abagadahawa, 6 letters, something being planted and firm. Then you have the Ra'ash. And Ra'ash is 200. Ra-sha-fa, 200, 300, and 400. So that's 200. All right. So you have 207. All right. You have 207. All right. So this is the light. This is what light represents. You have 1, then you have 6, then you have 200. So if you want to do it properly, you have 7, and then you'll have 200. So you have 7 plus 200s. And again, that 200 is a cycle ending, beginning again. That's 360. That's 360 degrees. So it could kind of be represented by hand, or power, because you've completed something and now you're supposed to master it and know it the second time. It could also represent a year, because a year in Hebrew, shana, it literally means 2, or second time around. All right, that's what the word year means. Year doesn't mean 1. Year means like second time around. It means the second or twice. That's what the word year means. Okay. In Hebrew, Shana. So you take these two letters now, you keep them two zeros there, but now you can go into 7 plus 2, all right, which is going to give you 9. And then you got them zeros on the side over there, just to kind of reiterate or going through that cycle or something being done twice, kind of like a reiteration. Now, that yod, again, is going to be the 10th letter. So what comes before the yod? The tet, all right, the tet or the tayath, all right, tet or teth, all right, and that represents something winding around or like a basket or something winding around, like repetition, but stability in that repetition, stability in that, and it represents like containment of something too. All right. Containment of something, repetition of something. So we see the Most High creating light from the beginning. He said, "Let there be light." Yahya, a war. So this was from the beginning and the repetition of something. And through that light, most of the stuff that's on the surface is born through that light. And that's where we got the 9. For us as humans, we have the 9 months, sometimes 10 with the Hebrew, but we have both being spoken of in the scriptures, 9 and 10 months. But for the most part, the normal human gestation period, they say, is going to be 9 months. But you can also go into 10 months if you're looking at the lunar calendar. All right. So we have that 9 represented by the light. All right. So you have to come into the light of those 9 months. Once you complete those 9 months, you come out of the darkness. When you in your mother for those 9 months, you come out of the darkness, right? And then you come into the light with your hands moving around. You holding your mother's finger when you're born, and you getting her you making the emotional connection, with your mother. You slapping, on your mother's chest or on her arm while you're nursing. And as the baby gets older, you just start moving the hand around and doing different stuff while it's nursing. And then eventually them same two hands start to hold like a bottle or hold a chicken leg, all right, or hold a mango seed, start sucking and feeding yourself. All right. So that is showing you the essence of understanding the light in order for you to come into the light and to progress. The purpose of coming into the light is to be able to be born. The purpose of coming to light is for you to be able to what? Be born again. All right. You're contained. You have your parameters and your boundaries are being set for you. It's an X with a circle around it. So you understand, if you just look at the letter itself, it's a circle that's outside of an X. So it's an X with like a circle around it. So like this circle shape behind me, and it's an X in the middle of that. It's an X in the middle of that. So if you take that and you go from one side to the other, that's going to be a tayat, ta. So it's the X inside. It's the X inside of it. So that's being contained, but also knowing which direction you can go inside there. So that goes into, like we said earlier, about discretion. So everything is contained inside that circle. All right. You got left, right, up, down in that particular circle. If it's 3-dimensional, if it's not 3-dimensional, you just set it upright. You can still go up, down, left, and right. But everything you do needs to be contained inside that circle righteously. If you go outside that circle, you can still move, but it's a whole different circle. So the light represents what we can do within our own existence, what we can do within our own realm. And that's why they say, my what? Bring it back. Within my what? My cipher. Now we can see the duality of it being 900. Remember, let's go back to 900 with those 2 zeros. All right, is what you can do on the left-hand side, because it's literally It's literally 2 zeros that you drawn, that you're writing, on the left and the right. You see that? Left side and the right side. Righteousness and wickedness. Where are you going to put light or energy into, to get into the light of righteousness, or to get more knowledge and exercising wickedness? Where are you going to be born into after your 9 months of gestation are complete? You're going to be born again as a new creature, or you're going to be born again as a new creature and then become a branch, and then become a branch that is not bringing forth any fruit and get cut off and then die again on the left-hand side. You see that? That's why I said, blessed are those which die in Adanya, or in Adonai, from this time forward. And listen, Adonis, Adonai, the Greek god, all of that came after the Torah was written. So don't try to associate the Greek words and meaning of words with the Hebrew meaning of the words, because we originated these words. And I already showed you earlier how the Greek letters come from the Hebrew letters, and how the English letters that come from the Latin letters, which come from the Greek letters, those come from the Hebrew letter, as well as the Hebrew understanding, which is the foundation of the mathematics and the alphabet. Matter of fact, the word alphabet is alpha beta, which comes from aleph bet, which is ox, house, which is the first 2 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So even when you're talking about 5% or supreme alphabet, that comes from the first 2 letters. That's why you can't say supreme Allah born. You can't say supreme Allah born, because the alpha is alpha and bet. So where did the alphabet of the supreme alphabet come from? The alpha, the A-L-P, aleph, comes from the Hebrew. The bet is the bait, which is the Hebrew word for house. Bait or baith or bayath. And the aleph, alep, alap. All right, the alaf, aleph, alpha, bet. Straight, it's all Hebrew. So you got to come back to the root of it, man. If you want to do the real science, you got to come back to the root of what it means, in the Hebrew. And this is a short lesson. This is a short lesson. Like, I ain't even, I just went over like a little bit of stuff I had written down, I'll let me see. I can and I could share what I wrote down with you. You could pause it and take a screenshot of it, because I just went into this, quickly. The knowledge I'm dropping on you is from off this one little page right here. This what I'm dropping on you just from and I just started doing and I did this as we were talking. The letters and the numbers, I just did that as we were talking, man. So I'm not saying this is like straight off the dome, but my point is that everything from here on up is what we went into. This is what we went into just now, and we didn't even go into all of it. So my point is that once you get to understanding, you get the basic foundation and the pillars of what everything represent, you can go high with this, and you can get a lot of detailed understanding of the Bible itself. You're breaking down words and breaking down what the word means, what that symbol means, can give you a deeper understanding. And this is something this is something that I teach brothers and sisters. The first letter of the Bible is a bait, not an aleph. The first letter of the Bible starts with the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, representing that you got to be inside the shelter of the knowledge of the Most High in order to understand the Most High. You got to put your trust, confidence, and faith in Him. That's what somebody's house represent. When you say come into my, I'm like, man, I ain't going in there. Why? Because something ain't right about there. But you go to your grandmother's house, man, you sit down, can't nobody tell you nothing. You take your shoes off, you go on the couch, you go into the bathroom, you wash your hands, you see what she's cooking, you go into the oven. That's what I did at my grandmother's house. That's what you did at your grandmother's house too, because you're comfortable there. You feel safe there. So that's the bet. That's what the house represents. You got to have faith, confidence, and trust instinctively from your spirit. Nobody teaches you, hey, when you go to grandma's house, feel safe, be safe. But if you ain't got no trust and confidence in the Most High, you can't have no trust and confidence in His word if you're not coming into His house. And what is the house we coming into? We don't go into it with the knowledge, but we go into it instinctively, because wisdom has built her house. And what did she build her house with? 7 pillars. She built it on 7 pillars. She built it on what? She built it on knowledge. All right. She built it on knowledge, instruction, understanding, discretion, equity, justice, and judgment. All right. So wisdom built her house on those 7 pillars. So that represents you coming into the basic understanding, the basic knowledge of Yahweh first. All right. And then once you get that into your head, the second letter of the Bible, Rash. Once you get that into your head, now you go into the third letter, which is Aleph or Alap. Now you come into the Most High as your power. So it's all written out there for you. House, head, ox. House, head, power. Now that shows you why the children of Israel wanted to represent the Most High with a calf, with a male bull representing power, or alap in the Hebrew, coming into the word Allah in the Hebrew also. Now coming into the Arabic, they took that and said, well, this is the God that we're going to worship. And they made a mistake. That's why they used the cow horns. The crescent moon represents the horns of the cow. You see that? So they did all of it wrong. But my point is that once you get the basic understanding of just 22 Hebrew letters, what they mean, now when you look at the Bible, you can be like, I don't understand this word, but I understand the concept. All right. And then the Sheen, which is the fourth letter, all right, with our Ash, the Sheen represents the fourth letter, which represents you processing, grinding something with your teeth, chewing it up. Chop it. Let's chop it up. Let's break bread. Let's build. Okay. Then the Yod represents the power, the fourth letter, Bara, Ash. Fourth letter, Yah, your hand and power. And then the Tawa, that's the end. It finishes it. All right. It's the finishing tool. All right. That's the 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. You understand? So when you do the numbers and the math on it, see what you come up with. So I'm just showing you how the Hebrew alphabet is not just an alphabet. Each word is a sentence. Each word is a sentence. Like the word wawa in Hebrew, which means and. So wawa representing the word and is the concept of you bringing two things together, trying to, make them have a connection. And that's what it means in Hebrew. It means and. All right. It means and, but it can also mean in the past tense, connecting where you are now to what happened then. Like we would say, why you debar, or why ya debar, and he spoke. It puts it in the past tense also, meaning this action I'm talking about now is connected to the past. So the wawa can connect what's happening, what you're telling me now with the past in the Hebrew language or in the Hebrew writing also. All right, so these are concepts that we got to understand, and these are concepts that are going to improve your walk with Yahweh, your walk with Hamashiach, because now you're not just looking at the Bible as words on a page, but drawings, illustrations, parts of a story that will give you a better understanding. And once you get that better understanding, you're supposed to get a better plan of discretion on how to execute everything. Execute it righteously, balance it in equity, and then know where it stands with justice or right and wrong. And then once you understand that right and wrong and the justice of that information you have, you got to apply it and put it into motion and show your justice. And once you show your justice and you show your judgment on that matter, and you put the judgment of the matter into the reality of the word with your hand, with your actions, with your activity, with your motion, then you move into where? That's the seventh pillar. Where do you go after that seven? Where do you go after the seventh pillar of wisdom? You go into wisdom's house that she built with the seven pillars. But you can't get there without walking and operating in those seven pillars. And that's why the first verse of Genesis, as we talked about last Sabbath, is so important, because it shows you the basic elements that you need, that the basic elements of knowledge, which is, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. On the Tiberian Hebrew, you would say, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim et ha'oretz, which means that in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So that's all of the knowledge contained everywhere, which is what? God, heaven, and earth. You can't get no more knowledge than that. Contained in the heavens, contained in the earth, and contained from and through God, or God, the Elohim, or the powers. You see? See, that's from what? That's from understanding. Now we're getting into wisdom. Now we're getting into which pillar of wisdom is represented in this verse to show how important it is. It starts off giving you, letting you know all the knowledge is going to be Elohim, earth, and the heavens, and you understand the balance of Elohim, heavens, earth. And on the sixth day, he made man, and that's where you are. So now you're working your way backwards to get back up to the Alahayim. Carnal man, earth; spiritual man, heavens. High level spiritual man walking in levels of wisdom is amongst the Alahayim, which is why the scripture says, I have said, ye are gods, ye are Elohim, and all of you are children of the Most High. You see that? So all this information is in the Bible, but understanding how to decipher it, how to process it, how to put it into motion is where we have to learn and grow, because it is helpful and beneficial to us to help us grow spiritually. All right. And once we grow spiritually, we go from being a child into a man or a woman. All right. But we're always going to be children of the Most High. Yaladim El Elyon, Yaladim Allah Al Yawan. All right. Or Yaladim El Elyon. That's how we would say it in the two different forms of the Hebrew. All right, so that's gonna be it for today. So the foundation of everything, I drew it out for you. Next time, I make this video on this subject, I'm gonna get into more specifics and maybe go into some examples. Okay, go into some examples, and the examples I'm getting to are gonna be using some of the words, and then the letters. So breaking down, what do the sounds of the letters mean? Alap, what does that mean? Beth, Bayath, what does that mean? Gamal, what does that mean? Wawa, what does that mean? All right. So these are the things that we want to kind of go into, and even breaking down the word itself. When you look at wawa, that's a hook, then a aleph sound, and then that's another hook together. Wawa. All right. So why is it like that? So think about that too. So our mathematics and our alphabet is the original on the planet Earth. The creation that happened didn't happen in Aramaic or Arabic or Ge'ez or Ethiopian. The creation happened in what we call Ivrit or Ibariath. All right. But it happened in Ribrith. That's what the creation happened in. And the word Ribrith is a word. Languages in general are represented having a feminine suffix on them, because that's like the first voice and vibration that goes on us as people, our mother. So that's why they don't say, what's your father tongue? They say, what is your mother tongue? Because that's who talks to the children the most, who's bathing them the most, feeding the most, washing them up the most, changing their diapers the most, cleaning them, taking care of them the most. That's why children a lot of times often develop the accent of their mother, not really the accent of their father, because it's more of a instinctive, subconscious draw to your mother and her voice. All right, especially for nourishment, and then for the discipline is associated, with your father. All right, associated with your father. All right, so me, for example, if I hear somebody talking from New York, I'm gonna think about my mother. If I hear somebody talking from Alabama, I'm gonna think about my father, because that's where he was born at, right? So it's just instinctive. So they call it the mother tongue. So the word for languages, the suffix is always going to be feminine. And that femininity, that suffix is represented by the yod and the tha, the hand, and then the X on the end, the tawa. What does that mean? What does that represent? Okay, what does that represent? And that goes into a deeper meaning. And a little bit of it could be the mother's body had the power to bring forth and manifest that child, or to exit out, to finish it. But she actually manifested the power, the yod of the child, and she exited out, meaning brought it into fruition. Like X marks the spot, we bringing this thing out. Now we're finished with it. Thawa. All right, represented by that X. This is the what? The due date. That's what you on your calendar. You say, there's the X, meaning this is when I'm taking my first day of my vacation. July 27th, put that X on the calendar. So when July 27th comes, that Sunday, that's going to be the first day of my vacation. I'm going to be on my vacation period. I'm not going to work on after Shabbat. I'm not going to do my 10 to 1 a.m. shift. I'm not going in that day, and then Sunday come, bam. July 27th, I'm on vacation, man. So that's the suffix ending. And that's the science, kind of the science behind it. So, once you understand these words and meanings, you look at everything in life in a different way. You'll say, well, what's the Hebrew word for this? What's the Hebrew word for that? And once you see these 2 or 3 words coming together, you'll have a better understanding of the word. All right. So that's kind of going to be it for right now. May the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Eloheh, Abraham, Yatazachak, Yaquab, or Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, bless you and protect you and your family. Hope this helps you. Hope you have enough information, enough overview to kind of get started on your own. And we'll pick up from here next time I come on here and share this information about the Hebrew mathematics, Hebrew alphabet, maybe going into the origins of it a little more, and then getting into some, different examples about how it's used, how it's applied, and some more historical references, all right, to help reiterate and to support and back up, what I'm telling you, sharing with you, teaching you, and explaining. All right, so shalom. Yabarakakam Yahweh Bashem Yeshua HaMashiach. Yabarakam Yahweh Bashem Yahushua HaMashiach. Shalom, everybody. Shalom. Whoever's still in the audience over here, shalom. The Most High bless you and protect you. All right, shalom. Shalom, shalom. All right, thanks for sticking around to the end. All right, Yahweh Dieth, appreciate you. And let me tell you, all right, you could do this with every word in the scriptures, every date on the Hebrew calendar. All right, shalom. La 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 la. Okay, Masha, you've been here too. All praise to the Most High. All right, so good to see you here too, man. I was about to sign off, but I said, let me sit and wait because there may be some kind of delay. I think there's a delay with the messages and how long it takes for them to come up, So, I thought, I thought you were still around, but you kind of stopped responding. I mean, I didn't know you were there because I didn't see nothing, and I didn't know nobody was there because, you don't see after a while the comments. There aren't really comments coming in, so you don't know if anybody's saying anything about what you're saying, you know. Um, so yeah, um, good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you sticking around, man. All right. Um, Thanks for contributing toward the commentary. Handle some side business. All right. All praise to the Most High. That's all good. Um, yeah. I guess you still heard what was going on, so that's important. And it's on YouTube, so it can be replayed and replayed and replayed. All right, to the tape pop. All praise to the Most High. All right, so I'm gonna call it an even 1:30. So when we get to 1 hour and 30 minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the broadcast. So if anybody wants to say anything, you got a few. You got a few. You got about a minute and a half to say anything else. Okay. Inbox me, shalom. All right. All right, shalom, everybody. Y'all will bless you and protect you. Shalom. I don't think I'm gonna wait for that minute and a half because it's kind of just sitting here now. All right, shalom, everybody. Again. All right, shalom. The very unpopular truth, shalom to you. The Most High bless you. Have a good Shabbat. Very unpopular truth, Masha. All right, Yahweh Fernandez. Have a good Shabbat too if you're still there. I guess we are waiting until half past. All right, shalom, everybody. We're going to hit it in about 15 seconds. All right, shalom. Actually, about 5 because it's going to take about 3 seconds to shut it down fully.